Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
And it is episode 124 of Podcast 241. Yes, it is.
Indeed. Yeah.
And we are talking Taika Waititi and Chris Hemsworth, Thor, Love and Thunder spoiler review. So, of course, if you haven't seen the movie yet, which if you're on this channel, we just assume you've seen it like 1,000 times, like at least we have, or maybe not very many times, then you don't want to watch this episode because we're going to get right into it, talk about the future of the MCU, all the post-credit stingers and everything else. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you're up to date on all future episodes of Podcast 2 for 1, as well as all the cool content we have at 2 for 1 Studios, youtube.com/2 for 1 Studios, the best place to consume the content. There we have original content like 2 for 1 Backflash, 2 for 1 Collectors, and of course 2 for 1 Joe every Monday live at 9 a.m., where we bring you all the nerdy news we think you care about in terms of movies and TV shows. And finally, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
I got through that pretty good that time. That was a good one.
That was great. Yeah.
That was a good one.
Quick and no stumbles.
I felt pretty good about that one. Daniel, we're here talking about Thor, Love and Thunder. And yeah, I mean, I have thoughts. I've seen it twice now. I know you've seen it once. We saw it the first time together. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock showing at the best theater in Arkansas, maybe the world. Maybe the best showtime, the biggest screen with our friends.
Yep.
Give me your initial reaction, and then we'll dive deep into this movie.
Yeah, my initial reaction was it was fine. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. It was just fine. And unfortunately, that was below expectations for me. I was hoping for at least good to great, if
Right.
making up my own scale right now. I think this one tipped way too far into the humor than even Ragnarok or any other Marvel property has at this point, I think.
Yeah.
And it undercut any kind of serious tone it had. It really underutilized a lot of the interesting characters I thought they had. And at the end of the day, I could not connect to either of the protagonists, Thor or Mighty Thor, Chris Hemsworth or Natalie Portman. I just felt like they were acting in like a screwball, comedy almost, where you're not supposed to get feel for the characters in in a personal way. And that's, they were telling a personal story about cancer, about finding, lost love, but just the way they told it, I didn't connect to any of those themes or any of those, I guess narrative beats they were going for. I just felt like they were there in they were present, but they were just hollow, if that makes sense. It felt like every time they tried to get intimate or try to get personal with characters, tried to have kind of like a heartfelt moment, it just felt very hollow because of, I think, the rest of the movie, how it set things up. And I didn't think the chemistry was great, honestly, either between Chris and Natalie. But yeah, so my overall, it sounds like I'm thinking it's bad, but I mean, it was fine. I guess I noticed that I consistently chuckled throughout the movie at little things, but I never laughed at anything, if that makes sense. There was always ha, oh, just little, because the jokes were so constant, and 1 in 5 hit. But yeah, that's my initial impressions.
No, I think we're kind of lining up a lot on this one. Whenever Thor Ragnarok come out, even just seeing the trailer for that one, I was very on the fence at the time because, funny enough, I had read the Gore the God Butcher story arc, right? The first 12 issues or so that run by Jason Aaron.
Are you talking about the trailer for this movie?
No, for
when you first saw
Ragnarok.
it? You said Ragnarok. Okay, okay.
Ragnarok. And I had read that and I saw the direction they were going with Thor then. And I was like, man,
Mm,
I want to get to gore and I want to get to that level, like that gravitas and
yeah,
like those kind of stakes and that kind of storytelling, like an epic Lord of the Rings kind of thing. And when
yeah.
Ragnarok come out, like everyone loved it. It was gangbusters, and it did really well at the
Mhm,
box
mhm.
office, and everyone just like started. I mean, I knew of Taika at the time, but like he really kind of blew up,
Sure,
right? We had What We Do in the Shadows, we had that,
he did.
and then Jojo Rabbit right after that, which
Yep,
I still think is 11 out of 10 movie. Jojo Rabbit is, and
agreed. I think it's his best film
oh, yeah,
that I've
it
seen.
probably I think you're right. It is the best movie, and I saw Ragnarok in theaters, and I thought to myself, okay, I had a good time with it. It was fun. It had a lot of cool things. I saw, I think, 4 times in theaters, but it wasn't still the Thor that I wanted. And I'd
Mhm,
made my peace with that. When we got to Infinity
mhm.
War, it was like, oh, this is what I've been
Yes,
looking for, where we can have that kind of humor that they've been kind of going for, but the Russo brothers and then Steven and Marcus McFeely come in and just give so much weight to like and put all
yes,
these things on his shoulders. And they give him one of the coolest things ever to do in the MCU, which we've talked about back in episode
mhm,
99 and 100 of Podcast 2 for 1, where he gets to make Stormbreaker and just how that
yeah,
happens, the build up to the Wakanda Forever moment, all those things that's peak Thor in the MCU. It still is peak Thor in my opinion.
yes,
And
agreed.
they changed things in Endgame. I still love him in Endgame.
Oh, yeah.
That works actually. What they do with him with the fat suit and the dad bod, as they
It
say
does.
in this movie. And of course, we're going back to Love and Thunder now, and that's a long way of saying like my expectations were okay. We're back to Taika now. They're probably gonna
Right.
lean in more to the humor, which we kinda got that in the trailers. And they're
Yes.
using Gord now, the guy that I've been wanting to see for years, and they're also doing the Mighty Thor storylines. A lot to juggle, and my
Yeah.
expectations were kinda low just in terms um, of just I could see the pieces of the puzzle coming together, and the painting or the picture just wasn't exactly what I wanted, and I knew it was gonna happen.
Yeah.
And we watched the movie, and you're like you said, I had a good time. Like I enjoyed it. I chuckled. There was moments in it that I thought were clever. There were some really cool moments visually and everything else. And I
Sure.
enjoyed the performances of like Gore the God Butcher. But there's other things that really stick out like a sore thumb, and we'll
Mhm,
get into
mhm.
those. But I think I'm with you. It's a long way of saying like after the movie happened, I kind of set back even more so now and thought, this is not what I would have done with these characters or this franchise. And it also, no, they don't all have to do this, but they need to. I don't know. Maybe they do now, but this movie did not move the needle forward in the MCU at all. And
No.
if if that's okay if the character arc is super
Yes.
strong, and I don't think it's
Yes.
that
If it's
strong of
not
this one.
moving the plot no, you're right. If it's not moving the plot forward, it needs to be character studies, a la Guardians of the Galaxy 2, right?
Yes,
Very little plot in that film. And for a while there, I was caught up in that. That frustrated me. But watching it with some fresh eyes, it was like, no, this is a beautifully in-depth character. We're just like digging really deep into like all of these characters and like
yes,
finding out why they're insecure, exploring their greatest fears, their weaknesses, like their faults and their strengths. Like that is a movie where you put the plot on hold and you just dive into character, and it worked brilliantly,
I'm
you
really
know.
happy you said that.
Um,
You're 100%. You figure about Peter's past, his relationship with his father, which
yes.
defines him. You figure out, it's another tale
Yes.
of your family, the family you've earned, and the family that your blood family or whatever. You
Yes,
hear
the
about
family you
Rocket's
choose.
relationship,
Yeah.
yeah, family choose. Thank you. Your Rocket and how he's just
Yes.
pushing people away all the time. Yondu and his
Him and
motivations.
Yondu connecting. Yeah,
Yeah,
him and Rocket have that great, like, scene where they're sharing like, talking about
oh
how they
yeah,
are with people. It's like really good, like, dialogue and just, like, good,
yeah,
like, it's stuff that relates to real life
yeah.
things, and it feels like it
Nebula.
parallels to real people and what real things that we all go through.
Yeah, Nebula and Gamora's relationship as sisters and kinda how that paint goes into
Yes.
Infinity War and Endgame, and then Drax, the moment where he puts his hand on Mantis and
Yeah.
she starts just, like, almost immediately starts crying, that to me is one of my favorite moments in the MCU still. When I saw it in theaters, I started almost sobbing in theaters because it's such a powerful and smart way to show this character's pain without breaking his character, that they've
It is.
established. It's so smart. And so yes, not to get on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but you're 100% right. That's a character study. And it's not always successful in its endeavors,
No,
but
and even that's a film where sometimes there's too much humor, and sometimes the humor doesn't hit.
100%,
That's a
100%.
and so to even but that I think that is a point to say that like the humor was an issue for me in Thor and Love and Thunder. I don't think it's the root of the issue. I think a lot of people are pointing to that like, oh, it was too humorous. I'm like, yes, and that was distracting as it was in Guardians too. I think sometimes the
Yes.
humor distracted from the good stuff. But if you have other good stuff like the like quality character studies or just good plot, neither of which this film had, it's okay. It can still work. You
Yeah.
can still come away being like that was a great movie. And I think you brought up something that I think is really I hadn't really considered is that like they were combining two huge arcs, comic book
Yes.
arcs into this film, being the Mighty Thor with Natalie Portman, Jane Foster's character, and then Gore the God Butcher. From what I understand, I know the Gore the God Butcher is like one of the most popular Thor arcs ever, and I think the Mighty Thor one's pretty popular as well. Um, so and what's interesting is with the Mighty Thor arc, with Jane's arc, what they were trying to do was like have a rom-com, right? Like have this like it's
Yes.
all about the romance between them. They do these weird long flashbacks to I guess like the time in between Thor 1 and 2
With Korg
essentially, but like
narrating, and Korg, let's just
yes,
say this, has
yes.
overstayed. I love Korg in Ragnarok,
Oh
actually. Like, he's
man.
kind of a saving grace
I
for me in that
loved him.
movie. And he, even in Endgame, and like, he's great. His little small role.
Yeah.
But he overstays his
Yes.
welcome so bad in this movie.
Yes, he does. And he literally tells us everything the movie should be showing us. He
Yes.
tells us Thor is sad. That's what he tells us. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like one of those huge
Yeah.
monologues is basically saying Thor is sad. Why? How? I'm sorry. We could have written a scene that much better like showed that
Oh,
instead
yeah.
of like just saying, hey, let's recap. And maybe part of this is the pressure of like, what is this film number like 38 or something in the MCU? I know that's not true, but like
It's 29.
29. Okay. So they're probably
I know
going
that
into
kind of
this at some
information.
point, at least the studio is saying, hey, we've got to make this like accessible to people that haven't seen any other Thors.
I
Right.
know, which I thought was
And,
weird.
and,
We're this
and I
far deep
think,
into it. We don't need the recaps.
but the problem is, I think that's going to be an issue that's going to continue going on is that Disney is not okay with just making stuff for the long-term fans. They've got to make stuff that attracts new fans and appeases the long-term fans. And I think that's going to get them in some tricky situations in the future.
I
But
get
going
it.
back to Thor,
Real quick, I
yeah, go ahead.
get that, but also it's like we Endgame made $1.8 billion. Sorry, 2.7 billion dollars, and
Yeah,
there's no recap. You know what I'm saying? Like
you're right.
that's movie 23, 24. And so
Sure.
like the proof's in the pudding. And anyway, go on.
I agree. I just don't think Disney will handle it that way.
I
I
agree.
think there's
I
too
agree
much
with you.
reactionary. Oh no, we got to get every movie's got to make $1 billion now or $100 million now or whatever. It just seems like that if it doesn't make a billion, it's a failure in some way.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right.
but I think going back to Love and Thunder, it's just the Gore plot line was just a half baked, like just completely under. He was just another antagonist, just another bad guy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I didn't feel like there was anything really special to him at all, like compared to like what the comics were about.
And we were going
Um,
into
and then the
hardcore
Mighty Thor
hearing.
stuff was just go ahead.
Wasn't say we were going into that hearing that he was the best villain ever in the MCU.
To be fair, we hear that out of the test audiences almost
Sure.
every time there's like some big name villain that's going to be new, and I do feel like that's just like Marvel marketing department like throwing things to these small outlets.
Oh, I'm
Like
sure.
I feel like that's just marketing because I don't know. I feel like we heard that about so many villains
I did think
recently.
his performance is good. I mean, like, it was for what they were doing. It's not the gore I would have made, but with what they were
Yeah,
going for, I kind of enjoyed like him on screen. You know,
it's
like it
Christian
was.
Bale.
Yeah, exactly. It's
He's a
my
good
Batman,
actor.
bro. My
He's a
Batman.
he's an Oscar-winning actor, right? Like, he is a fantastic actor. Like, he's a method actor, as controversial as that is, like, he's one of them that's, like, those, like, really gets into the roles kinda guy, sometimes too deep. And, that I think is also maybe why it's more frustrating is because you're getting a really committed performance from Christian Bale. I mean, the
Hmm.
movie opens on his backstory, right?
Right.
And it's like he does great. I did think that it was really goofy when that God was just like in that little garden and being like, I just fucked with you. I don't know. Maybe that's how the comics did it, but
No, I think that's
it just was a little on
trash.
the nose.
Personally, no, it's not. The comics are
Yeah.
not bad like that. That's
Okay,
trash.
good.
The
Yeah,
guy
but
didn't look good. He looked like a. That's what I'm saying. There's just
no, he didn't.
there's too many
He didn't look
tones
good at all.
clashing, and it's like that should have been a very serious moment, 100%,
Yes.
and not.
Yes, it should have. And I think
Yeah, yeah.
and I just think, every time he was on screen, he was great. He came across as this like really, tormented person. But then I also felt like, the way he like, eventually kind of Darth Vader's at the end, right? Kind of turns back to the light right at the very end and sacrifices himself for his daughter after killing like a bunch of people. Um which is
Which
an
we don't
interesting
really
thing that they
see
kind of
either.
we just see the bodies, right, of the gods that are like dead
Yeah,
because of
well, we
him.
just see like the Guardians, you know, tr- uh, whatever tracker thing saying he's killed all these people,
Right,
and
right, 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 right.
we do know that
You're right.
um, there's deleted scenes with like Peter
Yeah,
Dinklage's
yeah.
character or Eitri from Infinity War and Endgame, and there's also Lena Headey who we don't know who she
Grandmaster,
was cast as, and there was somebody else as well, and it kind of
Grandmaster.
the Grandmaster, thank you, Jeff
Yeah.
Goldblum, and they saved them for whatever reason, but it's like I don't know that we needed more people to die. Actually, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this was why didn't we kill Sif? I mean, is she that important to keep around? Like
Yeah,
she's a cool enough character, but like she doesn't do anything in the MCU. She's a plot device for Loki in his season, and then she's just
oh,
always
I
just
forgot she's
around.
in
And then
that. She's also in
yeah,
Agents of
well,
Shield, the first season of Agents of Shield. She makes an episode appearance actually.
I I watched the first season. I don't remember that, but
Yeah, she's in
yeah.
it.
So I think it's a thing of like you're right. They needed to actually be willing to kill more named characters. Plus, that would have given Thor a much more compelling reason to have like to be dealing with difficult emotions. I feel like we never saw Thor actually deal with hard emotions. He was always playing it off as like, and I get like that is kind of what in-game set up, right? Like depressed Thor that is putting up this front of like overly positive in order to hide his depression. And that's a real thing that people do, right? That's very common. But it just feels like when in Endgame, though, we got the depression seeping out. We saw him break. We saw him cry. We saw him, going to the past to see his mother and being like, I can't lose these people again or whatever, right? Um, and I
Yeah,
think that is what made it still work. Is that we're getting pretend cocky, chugging kegs of beer Thor, but what we're really seeing is that being a front, and we're really interested in the cracks that show and showing him be more of a real person.
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to, I even hearing Stephen and Marcus McFeely talk about kind of the themes of Endgame. One of them is what is a hero, and like what does it
Yeah,
mean to be a
yeah,
hero? And Thor is like, even though he has a small kind of role compared to like Cap and Iron Man, even because he kind
right.
of got his in Infinity War, his small little character arc in Endgame kind of encapsulates the themes because it's like someone who he's not sure
Yeah,
if he's worthy anymore of this mantle, and also
right.
the big thing is he is trying to be what everyone else wants him to be or something like that,
Yes,
which we got that a little bit in Ragnarok, right? I think where he or maybe I can't remember where he gets the throne. Yeah, he doesn't want the throne anymore in Endgame. He's kind of like, he passes on the
Yeah.
Valkyrie, right?
Well, it's that amazing line with his mom in the past where she's like, "It's time for you to stop being who you're supposed to be and just be who you are."
Right.
Right? And like that is the perfect direction to go with his character. Thor trying to figure out who he is. And I feel like that we did not get that. What we got was Thor rediscovering a lost flame and saving some kids from a bad guy. Like, it's not like he's like taking on a new role in Asgard after the events of this movie, or he's found a new purpose in life, right? Like, he literally rekindles an old love for her to die at the end of the movie.
Right.
And it feels like he's basically exactly where he was when we picked him up at the beginning of this film. Maybe he's a little bit more like open to, like, sensitive to his feelings, but I'm assuming that just because of plot, not because his character or his acting really portrayed that.
Yeah, that's kind of. It feels like that's kind of what they're doing at the very end. Like, keep your heart open to love. Um, Ironically,
That's
his
just weak,
daughter's name
man.
is
That's
Love.
such a weak thing.
It is weak. It
Yeah,
is really weak. I mean, the
I
big
didn't
thing.
like that either.
No, it's not. It's not the greatest.
Is
Yeah. I
that
mean,
comic based? Is that based in comics, by the way? Does he have a daughter?
no, no.
Or does he have
Not
not one
not that.
named
No,
Love? That's the
he
son
does
of
have
daughter of
daughters.
Gore?
I mean, actually, in the Gore story arc, real quick, there's three timelines when he's young and he has an axe, present day when he has Mjolnir, and the future one where he's Odin, like Thor Odinson, like
Yeah,
he is Odin, right? Um,
right.
and essentially there he has three daughters, I believe, but they're all grown up.
Okay.
It's like, it's like
Sure.
thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the future, where he's like the only
Right.
living thing, basically, and Galactus is coming or something like that to wipe out everything. So, um, yeah, I mean, real quick, you touched upon this. This will paint what we're talking about theme wise.
Mhm.
His relationship with Jane Foster. Obviously, we've been going into this movie knowing that, okay, it's a rom com. This is what Tyke and them keep saying. This is how you pitch it to Marvel. It's the MCU's first
Right.
true rom com, right? Where essentially you can just kind of break down that formula, right? You have two people, they're different but similar. They fall in love. There's something that breaks them apart, and at the very end, they get back together. That's kind of the general rom com love, right? Um,
Yeah.
which we'll break down that in a second because they didn't even follow the traditional rom com thing either, but
No.
not in a real way. In Thor 1, um, there we had that relationship there with Jane and Chris Hemsworth. It's one of the weakest, if not the weakest, relationship in the MCU because maybe MJ and Peter was until we got No Way Home, which they really solidified to me. Like, it actually made it pretty good. Actually, they actually cared about their relationship in that one. Um, but Jane is just
Yeah.
infatuated with Thor in that movie because two things: A, he's super hot, Chris Hemsworth, and then B, he validates her work. Like, he's
Right.
personification of someone who validates her work. Thor loves her because he does like her mind and he talks about how smart she is, that kind of stuff, but he really loves her. It feels like because she's pretty or she's infatuated with him or something. There's never a
Yeah.
good reason.
No, you're
It's
right.
even worse in Thor the Dark World. And she has this kind of like nervous energy about her and she's kind of awkward. And it's one of the things like I kind of forgot until I started
Ditzy. She's
watching.
a little ditzy, it feels
She's
like.
ditzy, yeah, but she's super smart but ditzy. And in Love and Thunder, they bring that back where she's kind of like she's trying to
She
be
is.
cool and but she's smart, but she's like awkward about it, all these other things. And I felt like it's a weird
Yeah.
thing to me. And I guess I don't know, maybe someone would tell me I'm wrong, but I feel like what could make her a better Thor or a different Thor is that she
Yeah.
was smart. And she like uses her
Yes.
intelligence at one time getting
Yes.
the Bifrost basically engine going, right, with the goats, which also
Yeah.
overstayed their welcome, at a certain
Yes.
point.
Yes.
She does that, and
The whole
then
point.
because
The moment they were on screen, they've overstayed it.
you're probably right. That and when she finds the Bifrost parchment paper inside the shadow dimension or shadow realm, I should say, which that's not smart. That's just her finding a
Oh,
piece of paper.
no.
That's it,
Yes,
and she gets to
exactly.
tell them this is what his plan is, right? So I don't know, like their relationship
No,
is
you're absolutely
not
right.
fun. It's not their chemistry was
No,
not very good. And
there wasn't
then,
any.
I mean, I did my favorite moment with them, and it's in the trailer, is when she's like, "It's my first bad guy," and Chris says, "Well, never forget your first." Like how that he says that is like
Mm,
perfect, actually. Like it's actually pretty good
mm.
acting, like a good moment for me. But because it's kind of like Thor is also ditzy, and like he just doesn't understand, and like what I mean,
Well,
it's
he's
just fun.
naive, right? He's like
Sure,
he
yeah,
kind of sees the world in this kind of naive, a little bit childlike view of like things good and bad and like these kinds of like
yeah.
he just yeah, he's a bit naive.
And it's also another Tuesday for him, another bad guy, right? He's fought in so many.
Right, right, yeah, yeah.
But I
No, I
just,
think you're absolutely right.
yeah, go on. I just
Go
it's
ahead.
not strong and it's not fun. Like
No. No,
you
it's not.
almost
It's
you
it
almost
doesn't
care more about him and Sif in that small moment, even though it's played for laughs and not in a great way, which also makes no sense because
No.
Jane doesn't die in battle at the end. I mean,
No.
how you technically do it, right? She dies.
In the way well, the
Yes,
technicality he described with Sif,
is exactly the
then that
way.
applies to Jane.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're absolutely right. I think I really feel like that is the Jane Foster we got in Thor 1 and I barely remember Thor 2. It's been so long. But I'm assuming the same one in Thor 2. And
Yes,
I think what would have been the better decision to say, "Hey, that's actually not very interesting of a character."
yes.
And why don't we evolve her? Why don't we say, "Hey, years of being on Earth and cancer has turned her into a serious, morbid, maybe depressy person. And then that is conflicting with this Chris Hemsworth that always wants to see that the sky is blue skies and rainbows. Like he only kind of is willing to feel like the world is good. You know what I mean? He kind of has this like ingrained toxic positivity a little bit about him. And that would have been so much more interesting having that conflict with like no, everything fucking sucks because I'm immortal and I'm dying of cancer and no one still respects my work. There's just so much more like that they could have done with that would have just been more interesting. And I just felt like every time that she was trying to make a joke or she was a butt of a joke, it just felt not good. It wasn't funny. It didn't feel like it made her character look good. I feel like it made
Mhm.
her character look really, really like plot devicey, very just like, oh, she's just the love interest. And if it wasn't Jane Foster, it could be any other name and any other actress, and it wouldn't change. Nothing would be different about the story or anything,
I
right? If they
agree.
just said, "Oh, Thor: Love and Thunder isn't about Jane Foster; it's about some new goddess that falls in love with," you have the same exact story. You have the same movie in front of you, right?
You
Maybe you
do.
have to do something different than cancer, but other than that, it's the same thing. And
There's something too
thinking
they
about
could
it,
have look maybe a potential reasoning around like her getting the ether in her body gave her cancer from Thor the Dark World. Her being
yeah.
around Thor in some way gave her cancer. Like maybe the
What if she
radiation
hates
from
him now?
Mjolnir.
What if she like, yeah, she like absolutely, yeah, she blames Thor for the cancer. She blames Thor for like where her life is at right now, kind of
Yeah, and
thing.
ironically, the
And
thing that saves her is to become Thor. You know what I'm saying? Like
yes,
that's a
and
story
yeah,
right there.
that's
Like,
much more compelling.
yeah, it is.
And that just having her like, of course, you can still keep Chris Hemsworth as this kind of comic relief guy. Just make Natalie Portman the like, no, nothing's fucking funny. I'm dying person, right? Like this kind of like more deadpan or just more serious person. And I think with the humor of Thor, we're finished rewatching season 3 and finishing Barry with my wife on HBO Max, and that is a show that is a comedy. I mean, it's literally a genre is a comedy. It's a dark comedy, but it's a comedy,
Yeah.
and they make stupid, silly jokes a lot. But what the difference is that world takes everything absolutely seriously. There's no one that acts like this is a joke or that is acting like whatever slapstick moment is, whatever certain characters delivering certain lines that are funny or whatever. Everyone acts like it is totally normal, perfectly serious, and the humor comes from that, right? That it's like no one's playing this like it is a joke, even though it is one. And that to me is the exact opposite of a Thor. It feels like everyone was playing everything as a joke all the time. And so it was like the world isn't taking itself seriously. So how am I supposed to take it seriously? And then
Yeah.
that's when you get to the end of it, I was like, okay, well, Gore didn't really care about Natalie Portman. And like you said, it's not like this moved the universe anywhere, and it's not like it took Thor's character in a new direction. Right? It's just like, well, what was the point a little bit of this film? Like, why did we
Yeah.
need this? What was so important about what happened in this movie that it had to be told? Right? Like we talk about like, what stories do we make into movies, or like what direction do we take? We take the most interesting one, or we say like, what is the most interesting version of this? And I just can't imagine that this was the most interesting version of another Thor movie.
It wasn't. Let me just say that to you. A few things, and then we'll kind of start to wrap up a smidge.
Sure.
One, the Guardians in this movie, we come off
Totally
Endgame,
wasted.
and there are small interactions in Endgame, and then their large screen time together in Infinity War really got the internet buzzing. We talked about it a lot on the
Fantastic.
pod and just
I
privately
loved
saying,
it.
okay, what's that movie look like? How's this going to play into the MCU? What's their journey going to be together? And it's literally like they probably have, I don't know, 10 minutes of screen time, and it's more of like reaction shots to like watching Thor do his thing. And
Yeah.
it's almost like I almost, Dave Bautista kind of comes out lately, not recently, but he's made comments in the last couple of years, kind of like,
Yes.
yeah, we're just like these, or I'm just coming in to do it, and like they don't really care about Drax, and like I understand if like you're being contracted
Yeah.
to show up and be painted up, and just you're being a background character, and I mean I get it,
Yeah.
it's kind of you're part of this machine, and you're kind of playing ball at some level, but like there's nothing going on for these guys, and like I don't know why they did that to then write it
No.
away. It's like one of those things where like you write yourself into a corner because it hopefully breeds some type of interesting story or conflict, and they just like wrote it away because they just didn't want to tell that story, which is fine. But I don't know. It's not a.
Then
It would.
it just feels again, it just feels underutilized. It's just like, well, if we're having Korg narrate everything else, just narrate them out of the movie too. Why do we even need that scene? You know
Well,
what I
it
mean?
it
Like,
feels like the whole movie feels like we're setting things up and then we're getting no payoffs, right? Like
yeah,
Guardians, they're in
100%.
there, they go away. We get the mighty Thor, and they kill her off. So we don't get that continuation. But then we also don't get the continuation of her death because we see Valhalla. So it almost like teases a potential return. We have Gore, but then he doesn't really follow through in his plans, and we don't really believe his motivations. I don't believe him in totality. And then
Well,
like,
and
I don't
two,
think he
uh,
would terrorize children. Like I think if he was that tormented,
no, the
he would
reason he
never do
became
that.
this was because the reason he became who he is because his daughter died. And that person is going to terrorize children now. Like
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense for his
not at
character.
all.
And then he
I don't think so.
sacrifices himself for his daughter at the end. No, that's not
Yeah.
consistent. What the fuck? I mean, like I just and honestly, just such a boring thing to have him invade the new Asgard and just shadow people, take children away, and like and then like the rest of the movie, they're just trying to get the children back. Like it's just such a boring plot
It's
to me. Like I'm
very
just like,
it's very
ugh,
kindergarten plot to me, like, that is. Like, this guy comes to
yeah.
and steals the children and leaves, and they have to find the children. When you say it like
Yes,
that,
it sounds like
sounds very
it
boring.
feels like it's like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, like family friendly movie, like for
Whoa,
kid. Like
don't bring in Arnold in a negative way here.
I'm
That's
sorry,
different.
but I'm sorry. It wasn't a negative. I actually think those are great movies because they know what they're doing and they know what they're trying to be. This
That's
movie is an
better.
MCU movie that's trying to, I guess, be that. But yeah, it just feels like again, honestly, the stakes are children. Right? Or I
Which
guess
in
the stakes
theory
are if
should
he can
be
kill all gods at one point. Like he can I
yeah.
guess that is the final stake is that he can like wish for all gods to be dead. But also it then introduces the like, why haven't we been trying to find this magical wishing well like way earlier in the timeline? Like
Well, if
this would have been helpful multiple times.
it feels like a couple things.
It's a
A
MacGuffin. It's just a
Well, yeah.
total MacGuffin.
Well, definitely a MacGuffin. They apparently the internet. I'm not a huge familiar with this character, but like the internet has in totality agreed that what the being at the center of eternity is like pitch perfect comic accurate. Like they nailed that. The visual look of
The
this
what
like
is? Oh,
the figure in the center of the universe that grants the wish, the
sure.
eternity, whatever.
It looked
Um,
like a Buddha statue or something.
yeah, like it's almost like a Galactus, like celestial Buddha statue. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like a few things. One, you ask yourself, why didn't Thanos go to that and then,
Yeah,
instead of collecting 5 stones, it sounds
yeah,
like, well, it feels like this was a knowledge only privy to the gods. One, they don't say that, but it kind of feels that way. I don't think Thanos is a god, and then also it feels like Gore was presented this information as the necro-sword called to him, and like he got that, which
hmm
also that's an interesting, also a very interesting like story of like the necro-sword and like who's controlling it, like, and they just did not
yeah.
talk about that at all or tee that up. And if you don't know,
Who is
in the
controlling it in the
comics,
comics?
it's Null, the symbiote king. So he's basically like the god of
So I remember,
symbiotes.
yeah, tied to Venom.
Yeah, and there's other things like basically the necro sword. It has that sword, but it also makes like a symbiote kind of like cloak, or it can be whatever. In the
On the
comics,
person.
on the person, and on the comics, Thor literally gets Mjolnir. He gets 2 Mjolnirs from different time periods, and then he gets the necro like armor on him, and it's like him, the necro
Mm,
sword, 2 Mjolnirs, and it's like the coolest thing ever. And then at the very end of that,
mm.
like there is narration in the comic, and Matt brought this up to me like I think yesterday, which I forgot about because like the story is kind of told like was I think they might have pulled from this as like someone narrating, but it's like it feels more like Lord of the Rings narration, not like Korg being stupid funny narration.
Mhm,
At the very
mhm.
end, it's like all the gods in the universe pray to Thor at the end to give him more power. And it's
That's
like
cool.
Thor. I get chills talking about it. It's like in the comic they say Thor becomes like the god of gods. And it's like in that moment, it's like
Mm,
he's super saiyaned up, and it's like the coolest
right.
thing ever. And
Yeah.
it's like, why don't you do that? I don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I agree.
yeah. Anyway, they underutilize the Guardians. Undercut all these things, right? Um, how do you feel about the kids at the end getting powers? It feels like it's a very like I can see Taika, I can see the Taikaness there, but also I don't know, it just kind of feels
It
lame a
was
little bit.
cute, and I don't know, I enjoyed it on a visual level, you know what I mean? And it did have some just, like there was, like, this level it was kinda cool seeing Thor, like, do the same little whisper that Odin did, um,
I did like
in
that.
Thor 1, and, like, kind of granting his powers to them, um but at the end of the day, it wasn't worth having the kids in the plot. You know what I mean? Like it was like this is not a good payoff for all this stuff. The Heimdall kid, like Heimdall's son, I felt like every time they did humor with him, it just again just felt awkward and not good. Um and yeah, I don't know. It was fine. I guess it was probably the best like version of it that they could do when you have a bunch of kids stuck there rather than just like running away and being saved. But um yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
At that
Derpy,
point, I'd kinda giving up on the movie, like, satisfying me, and so I'm like, "Whatever." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
okay, whatever.
Derpy Gaming on YouTube has commented. He said the movie was very mid. It looks like he hated
Mhm.
Ragnarok, and it should have been more like Thor: The Dark World in terms of tone, in his opinion. Um, yeah, I mean, I get it, man. It's it's not what I wanted. Again, it's not the thing that I wanted. I want to ask you too about, well, how do
Yeah.
you feel about them killing off Mighty Thor, Jane Foster, and also like I don't know, the cancer running its
I'm
course, it
fine
feels
with it.
like, and her making that decision and then her dying. Like, are you surprised that it didn't continue on this character?
No, because it's Natalie Portman, and she's, like, an A-lister actress that, like,
But
won
but
again, like, won multiple
but
Academy
what does
Awards, and,
she
like,
but what does she do
I
now
just don't
that
think
makes her busy? Nothing.
I
She
mean,
does
you're right,
nothing.
but, I mean, also, she probably doesn't need to be busy. She's probably, like, a multi-billionaire or whatever, anything.
No,
But
she's
my
not a
point is,
multi-billionaire.
she if she had been an interesting and like interesting character in this movie, I probably would have like been a little disappointed maybe, but she wasn't. So I mean, if that's the only kind of Jane Foster we're gonna get, yes, kill her. I don't want it anymore, honestly.
Do you think she'll come back from Valhalla?
Yes, some point. I mean, they wouldn't have done that if they didn't at least have an idea of to use her at some point. I mean, who is going to be the character that takes Thor's place someday? That is the new Thor. Is there like a comic? We have Ironheart for Iron Man. We have these other like
I'm glad you
Miles
asked, Daniel.
Morales, and do we have a Thor Jr. or something?
Yeah,
Oh no, actually I
his
do
name
know.
is
The Go
Beta
Getting
Ray
Thunder.
fucking Bill is his name.
Right.
He is a horse man, and he has Mjolnir, and he's fucking awesome. So that's who replaces Thor Odinson.
Sure. So I was thinking maybe she might play a part whenever the torch gets passed, or maybe she'll just be there whenever he enters Valhalla, and it'll just be like she's there for one scene, to be like, "Oh hey,
You
welcome."
know, and granted, I mean, she
But
may care, she may not care, but I always kind of imagined, I always thought like, hey, I don't know, I guess Valhalla is like heaven, maybe, or it's a
oh yeah,
version of
it's the
heaven.
Norse heaven. It's Norse
Oh,
heaven.
and I know
That's
that.
all
I'm
it is.
saying, like, why doesn't, like, so if you're saying like there's gods and there's like versions, different types of heavens or
Hmm.
whatever, which, I mean, maybe Valhalla is the only one that has a real heaven in the universe. I don't know, but it's like, so she died as a Thor and she went to that heaven. Like, wouldn't she want to go to like her heaven? You know, maybe she's an atheist because she's a
Oh, well,
scientist. I
she's
don't know,
yeah.
but you know what I'm
I don't
saying.
know.
It's kind of like,
Yeah,
huh? She's there trapped with people she doesn't know now. I mean, she's in heaven. I guess it don't matter. But I don't
yeah,
know. Yeah, Derpy says still waiting on Adam Warlock. Me too, buddy. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, that will be happening. Um, I just, it's not what I wanted. Question mark. How do you feel about I mean, Zeus and Omnipotent City? What it's, I can't think what it's called. Omnipotent City. It's what it's called. I did like
yeah,
seeing Russell Crowe and Zeus. That was fun. How do you
yeah.
feel
The
about?
Italian accent was fun,
Yeah,
but
I don't
I
like
mean,
all the
again, just
gods, like the dumpling god.
underutilized.
It's just kind of like lame. Like it feels universe
It's
breaking.
goofy humor. It's goofy humor that just again feels like the world not taking itself seriously, right? It just feels like everyone's a parody of themselves, and it wasn't again. I wonder if you noticed this on the rewatch. I feel like when they do that first big panoramic like move of the city, I was in the theater. I'm like, it's blurry. Like it's like they cranked motion blur way too high on the move, and it was like feels like you're making this blurry because you didn't have time to like finish the VFX to make it like
Maybe
clearly,
very
or something.
very possible.
Um,
Yeah, what they
but
did.
also, yeah, it was just a big green screen city, and nothing interesting really happened there at
Yeah.
all. I mean, the most interesting part of that is what they do at the end credit scene, which is introduce Brett Goldstein as
Yes.
Hercules, and like that's an interesting casting choice just because I like Brett Goldstein, but I also don't have that much faith they're going to do him very well at this point with these
Yeah.
Asgardian godlike characters. Yeah, I don't know. It was I guess a little more interesting when they got there, but I was I was already at that point kind of like not connecting with the story and not connecting with these characters, that it just nothing there did anything that got me more connected with them or made me more interested in the plot or anything like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like the idea of the Thunderbolt. I like the idea of like getting new
See, that looked
weapons and
goofy
that
to
kind of
me,
stuff.
man. That
Really?
looked super ass goofy to me. Yeah.
Really? I
It did
actually like
not
that. I mean,
look cool at all.
I think again what you do if you're cool is you combine your weapons. Like you make like you need combo moves, right? I mean, you kind of get that when he's holding necro-sword and he kind of moves it so she can throw the hammer. But like
Hmm.
you need like Cap throwing the shield and throwing Mjolnir and like it bouncing off each other. Like you need to do that with Thor, like with the axe and with the Mjolnir and
Yeah,
with the lightning bolt. Like
you're
make up
right.
shit, make up cool shit. If you have $200 million and
Yes.
I don't know. It's like that's simple to me.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
none of the action was very interesting at all.
I
At
did
any
like
of
the
them, I felt like.
concept of like Mjolnir breaking apart and then coming together. I did like that. I
Yeah,
thought that was visually cool.
agreed. But that was it. That was the only like, oh, this is cool in terms of like the fight scenes or any of that.
Yeah. Well, we are getting
Yeah.
Love now in the MCU, which is actually Chris Hemsworth's actual daughter, um, which would even more so make him more inclined to come back for a Thor 5 because now his daughter gets to be in the MCU as a major character, and he
Right.
can he can literally pass the torch on to his family. Do you think she'll be a major player going forward, like a Young Avengers kind of situation?
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's no basis for her character in the comics. I mean, it's maybe they're setting her up to be like the Thor successor for the role. I mean, it feels like it. Um, I also just didn't buy that like Thor would just start gallivanting with this random ass girl after he defeated her dad in combat. Like it's just like it's a
I
stretch. It
agree.
just feels like a jump. It's like what? Why? We've never gotten this impression that Thor wants to be a dad or like is feels like this is his duty for some reason to take care of this girl. Derpy Gaming said that Bale's performance carried the film, and I agree. I do think that Bale is every time Bale was on screen, I was at least more interested than anyone else was, right? Um,
Probably,
but
yeah.
I still feel like with his daughter, I just didn't enjoy the way they ended it, and it was a funny-ish, the pancakes scene, and then them running out to do battle, and him saying like, we help the good guys or whatever he says about help the people that are in trouble or help people that can't defend themselves or whatever he says, and that was cute and quaint, and she was a decent actress actually. I think
Hmm.
I'm just not interested in like their adventures really together. They've given me no
I'm not
reason to
either.
think that anything's interesting going to happen between their characters within themselves. So
No, I 100% agree. Um, Last thing we'll talk about, and we'll hop off here. The overall direction of the MCU. It feels like there's been a lot of pushback in terms of fan base. I'm feeling this way, myself
yeah,
included, in terms of we're there's a graphic out there. I think it's 55 hours of Phase 4 so far, and I think there's like 30 something to 40 something for the first three phases combined. And so it's like we have
mm,
all this time we've invested in the
yeah,
MCU,
yeah,
and we don't really have a strong direction yet of where we're going. And these things are feeling very disjointed. And the quality is also kind of
yes.
dipping in and out, even though like we're having Miss Marvel conversation next week, but it feels like we might be in the minority on that one because it's got a 96% Rotten Tomatoes. But that means nothing, I
Yeah,
guess, right?
no, no, that means absolutely nothing. And I think,
But
yeah, we can get to that one later.
we're going to have San Diego Comic Con around the corner, and surely we're going to have some direction there. Captain America 4 director was just announced, um, which is a weird choice, by the way. And the guy who made
Oh
Cloverfield
yes, it
Paradox,
is a very weird choice.
which I'm like, man, I guess I don't
Scares
have to make
me.
I don't have I know, I guess in my head, I'm like, I guess I don't have to make like a super good movie to be in the working in the MCU. Like I can just have to have a good concept or a good pitch or something.
You
And
gotta make
that's the road.
money. You gotta make money. I
I
mean, at the end
guess.
of the day,
But it was
probably.
also a
Yeah.
Netflix movie. Anyway, that's in the conversation. But how do you feel about the MCU right now? I mean, like to me, we kind of had a dud with Doctor Strange in terms of our expectations are too high, which is probably our fault, but also just the movie doesn't really work in my opinion.
No.
Thor also, my expectations are about what I expected, but it kind of again
Yeah.
a dud overall. And then now we're coming into Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and we already at a disadvantage because we don't have Chadwick Boseman in it, and who knows what they're going to do in terms of passing the mantle down, which could really make or break the movie for me in general. So what do you
I've
think?
seen some leaks. I've seen some leaks about Black Panther. I mean, that one's just a total mystery box, right? Like that could either be great or it could be literally horrible. And I do trust Ryan Coogler as a director. I do think he's a great director. So
I
I
agree.
think that that movie probably has a better chance than others would if he wasn't attached. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I'm a part of like Reddit and like I enjoy Reddit and I'm part of a lot of the MCU um Reddit communities, and for a long time, like especially with after Infinity War and Endgame, like there's been a collective positivity on everything MCU in that group. You know what I mean? Where everyone's loving what's coming out, really excited for the future. And now it's very split. I mean, the amount of posts that I see that's like, why doesn't everyone like this movie? And then you have very convincing arguments in the comments about why it's not great, whether it's the Eternals or it's Doctor Strange or it's Miss Marvel, whatever it is, it's becoming much more divided about it. And there's some people that think that they're being too critical, and then those people say that like I think we are. They're like, no, I mean, for one, they set a high standard, and if they're dipping below that, that deserves to be talked about and noted. But for 2, it's art, and all art is worthy of criticism, and all art should be like critically analyzed. That doesn't mean like aggressively or negatively like tearing it down, but it means critiquing it, like looking at what it does well and what it's trying to do. Did it accomplish that kind of stuff? But yeah, I feel like we're at a period right now where like in the last, year and a half since kind of WandaVision, which was like the beginning of this phase, I guess, of all the things that come out, I mean, No Way Home was great, fantastic, up there with like Infinity War and Endgame probably. Shang-Chi was a fun action martial arts flick. WandaVision had a really good, at least kind of suspense and week-to-week zeitgeist conversation that was enjoyable. And then Moon Knight, I think, is a pretty good standout. I don't think it's not as good as it still could have been. I think there's still some parts of it I think it missed a little bit. But like, you're right. We've had like how many shows and how many movies at this point, and like less than half of them, for me, have like met expectations. And one of them exceeded it, which is No Way Home. That's the only movie that's exceeded my expectations this phase. And everything else has either met it or just barely met it or whatever. And I just think, yeah, we're at a point where Marvel is producing so much content. And I was, I may have talked about this in private or even on the podcast before, but like it, when they were ramping up about this, when we had the big D23 a few years ago where they were announcing all these movies, it is this kind of thing of like, they're spreading themselves a lot more thin here, right? Like Kevin Feige can't be as directly involved with every one of these movies or every one of these shows. Like he just time-wise, like there's just not enough time, and things are being filmed just constantly, but and I guess there's always the chance that like, yeah, when you spread yourself thin, you have to hire people that you wouldn't have hired if you didn't like have to find someone for this role or whatever. I just think it is a little bit nervy going ahead, and just like, I still have hope that they can kind of turn the ship a little bit and get a more exciting kind of momentum with the MCU right now. But right now the universe has no momentum. You know what I mean? There's no, we don't, and right. Kevin said we're about to figure it out. I'm guessing the D23 in September is when we get this announced and stuff, but we're about to see where the universe is going. We're about to see like the big bad or where everything's kind of pointing to. But when you've taken like 2 years and like you said, like what, 55 hours of content, and you haven't done that yet, that just feels, for one, it feels like cash grabs, right? It feels like, well, we're just putting out movies because people will see them, not because they're like that interesting or like that good. And for 2, it just feels like, yeah, it makes me wonder, are we gonna get that fate, that Infinity Saga MCU, or are we gonna become the curmudgeons of Marvel as they were with Star Wars, where it's like, man, anything after the original saga just shit. You know what I mean? And like,
I'm afraid of that, honestly. I'm really
I
afraid
am
of it.
I am too. But
I think there's
what are your
hope.
thoughts?
The thing that I keep going back to is,
Agreed.
are there characters I still care about? And there are, but the movies that are coming out are kind of boring me. Again, Doctor Strange, I felt like he was going to be like potentially one of my new favorite characters, and like he was, but they're just not doing enough for his. Like he had a really weak. I think he had a weaker character arc than Thor did in Love and Thunder in his own movie, personally. And they're kind of both similar, actually, in like moving on and like finding more love in your heart. It's actually very similar character arcs. They're trying to accomplish, and they do it in like Doctor Strange by literally giving him a new love interest in the post credit scene. Also, but
Sure.
I agree. I am
that.
kind of getting worried about it. I think earlier this week with Luke on 2-for-1 Joe, I mentioned out loud, this is the first time I'm kind of feeling the quality of the MCU start to dip. I mean, it used to be like, I mean, I still am super excited. I'm still going to watch everything, but it's not like, I mean, like Civil War, when that thing was coming out, because of the Winter Soldier, I was just like, holy shit, I cannot wait for this fucking movie. And then even more so for Infinity War
Yeah.
and Endgame, I was like foaming out the
Oh my
fucking
god.
mouth.
I remember being in grad school and like before class, we watched the first Infinity War trailer release like on a morning where we had
Yeah.
class together, and we watched it like 5 times in like 15 minutes before class
Yeah.
because it was just
I
like, and
literally
it's one of the best trailers that MCU's ever done. That
Oh yeah.
VO from Samuel L. from Avengers One, it's a
It's
fucking
so
amazing
good.
trailer.
That trailer's
Yeah,
better than Thor: Love and Thunder by itself. It really is. It
you're right.
is.
You're right.
I watch that trailer every day, at least once a day until the movie come out, once after it dropped.
Oh,
800%.
dude, yeah.
There's no questioning that. Like I love trailers. Yeah,
I
I
just got
mean, I'm
shivers remembering.
oh yeah, it's such a smart idea. And that's the thing. You have filmmakers who can balance tone. And I mean, maybe I'm sure that people think we're in the minority and people think that Love and Thunder is fantastic. I just think that
I mean, I
we're
don't think
probably
so based on audience reviews and
no,
things like that. I
I mean, I'm
think
saying there's somebody out there, right, that really likes it. I don't
oh,
think we're
sure.
one of the people that do,
Yeah.
but I'm hopeful for Black Panther. We have Ant-Man next year. We have Guardians Volume 3. We have um, the Marvels, which we'll talk about next week. And yeah, I just don't see like we have Fantastic Four around the corner sometime, X-Men sometime.
Right.
I'm curious. I mean, I feel like we've gotten already past our big characters in this phase now, like Thor, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man. Like we've gotten the sequels to all those big ones. And again, Chadwick is gone, so we're not getting like a true sequel with him anymore. So
No,
I feel like
yeah.
we're getting like ancillary characters now for the rest of the phase, unless they announce something else. And also maybe we'll know
Yeah,
where
I mean,
phase four
Blade will be a
ends.
big one. Blade will
Is
be
that
but
phase
that's
five? Is that
next
phase
phase.
four? I don't know, you
Yeah.
know.
I mean, I think yeah, I think the big ones on the horizon are the X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Blade. Like that's the big like
Sure.
those movies will be notable and like there'll be hype about those that expands beyond the MCU fan base, right? People that just grew up with Fantastic Four, X-Men comics, or people that loved the Blade movies of the 90s and early thousands. Like there's going to be more hype around those just from people that don't even care about the MCU, probably.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think those movies do offer really strong potential like characters that could really anchor the cast of like the total MCU in the future. I mean, Charles Xavier, Wolverine, Mr. Fantastic, Johnny Storm, like there's just so many like A-list Marvel universe characters among that group. Blade, I mean, like him alone and he just represents like a total badassery. That is, and I think Derpy Gaming said it just a minute ago, saying that Guardians 3, Fantastic Four, X-Men are what he's like looking forward to, and I agree. I think that is the hope of the MCU right now, and I less so Guardians 3 just because I think the Guardians will be done after that, and I think I would be surprised maybe even if Chris Pratt stays very active or if any of those characters stay extremely active in the MCU ever. Maybe one or two of them, maybe Groot, just because I'm sure Vin Diesel's got plenty of time. But it's just I think that'll be a great movie. I still think that'll be like James Gunn and in his element, and I think it'll be fantastic. I'm not expecting that to like make me be incredibly important to maybe the universe's story. I kind of expect that to be a really nice finishing of the Guardians and like kind of the stakes are these characters and like really kind of giving them a send off. But I agree, like X-Men, MCU, like those are, that's where the hope is with me right now. I mean, outside of that, like you're right, any of the new characters, a lot of them are interesting. Moon Knight is interesting. Some of the Eternals are interesting. But no one stands out as like, oh yeah, this is the new Iron Man. This is the new Cap. This is whatever. And I think hopefully, they can really knock it out the park with X-Men and Fantastic Four. I mean, and like they are, outside of Spider-Man and Batman, some of the most popular superhero IPs of all time, those two, some of the longest running. So there's every reason they should be able to take those and generate some good momentum and excitement again, but we'll see.
I hope so. I think the big thing for me is also yes, they can make all these characters A-listers X, Y, and Z, but I do sigh at the fact that we won't get Steve Rogers with Wolverine, or we won't get Tony Stark with Mr. Fantastic. Like that
Right.
kind of stuff hurts me, and like we're never going to get the version of like that I want now, unless we do like a Secret Wars kind of thing, which I'm still hoping we bring in people. And now I feel like they have to have Tom Cruise come in as a superior Tony Stark at some point, which I would still absolutely love. So,
Yeah,
but maybe he won't
it's a
do it.
great
Maybe he
choice.
wants to be an actual like a superhero versus a
Yeah.
villain. Anyway, Daniel, how can our listeners write into us?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/2for1mail. Let us know what did you think of Thor: Love and Thunder? Are we just totally off base here? Is it the best Marvel movie that's ever been made? That's actually factually incorrect, but if you want to say that, we will laugh at it privately. And so bit.ly/241mail, or you can join the chat like Luke Irvin and Derpy Gaming have done and been chatting back and forth with us and
Yeah.
engaging with the conversation. So either one of those, great avenue to be a part of the show.
And of course, if you can't hit up our Bitly, like Daniel said, you can leave a comment in the comment section below after we're not on the air, and we will try to respond to you in due time. Of course, we have, after this episode, The Boys Season 3 breakdown. Then we have Miss Marvel season overview. Then we have Dr. Bruce Hutchinson back in the studio to talk The Prestige, directed by Christopher Nolan, and another script breakdown. And of course, if you want other MCU things like She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, all those kind of conversations, you can always hit that subscribe button on the page and show your love and support. Daniel, I'm glad we got to talk about Love and Thunder. I'm excited to buy the Steelbook after all that.
Are you excited to, or you just know that it's going to happen? Like it's
I
inevitable.
think
Are
you're
you
right. I think it's
excited to
more
buy it?
I know that I have to do it. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
more of like I'm bound to this. Actually,
Yeah, it's more
I'm
like eating bad food, and like I don't want to eat another bite, but like my brain is telling me you have to have another bite. So
yeah,
um
right.
probably like that. Again, I find enjoyment out of it. But anyway,
Sure.
my name is Donovan Thompson,
I am Daniel Wingfield.
and we have spoken.